Coming to you from the LoadingReadyRun orbiting underground moon base, it's the LRRcast. I appreciate the effort on trying to do some sort of intro piece.
I guess, yeah. It's like, hey, we're here. We're here to talk.
Yep.
So,
who is here, by the way?
Today, it is Paul and
Alex.
And Cameron.
Yay. It's the three of us, and today we are going to be talking about, we a number of months ago now, we put out a call on Twitter for possible future topics, and then we basically ignored all of those ideas.
Yeah.
Because we're hateful people.
But we did record all of those ideas. I wrote them all down, and we were thinking that maybe we should actually go back and look at some of those.
Yeah, instead of just like teasing our audience.
Yeah, instead of just being like, give us some ideas. Those were terrible. We're not going to do any of those.
Yeah.
We have better ideas. Because it turns out we don't. So today we are going to be talking about hobbies.
Hobby.
And I guess the first thing to do would be come up with a working definition of hobby.
Ooh.
For the purposes of this podcast anyway. Which to me would be like something that you're passionate about, that you spend a lot of time on.
Or maybe even not a lot of time, just like an amount of time.
Yeah, or I guess do you spend a disproportionate amount of time.
Something you don't do accidentally.
But you don't get, I guess that you don't get paid for. Would be the big, or at least you don't get paid enough for.
Or it's at least orthogonal to work.
Yes,
right? Like
and
it's unrelated to work.
That's
in some cases, you are actually actively paying in order to do it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think I like that definition.
And something that you would continue to do.
I might need to bend that for whatever I'm
Or
gonna
do
end
you
up
want to go
talking
with
about
something like a mental palate cleanser?
I guess, yeah, a hobby, I guess, is in some ways, yeah, it is sort of what do you do to relax after you've done what you have to do.
That's a good one, actually, Cam, and it segues into what you were going to talk about, because, like, when I sit down and build model kits, it's kind of nice because it's, like, unplugged from everything, and it's just, like, it's kind of zen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like, one task you focus on, and, like, you just, to the exclusion of everything else.
Right.
So it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Centering.
Yeah, centering is a good way of describing it, I think.
And, like, getting high off the, like, solvents and stuff is sweet.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, that's why you use acrylic paint, water-based, right?
That's why, yeah.
Clutch tech.
Always do model making in small enclosed rooms.
Yeah,
with a lit cigarette.
Yeah, and leave the lid off your bottle of turpentine.
All right, so talk to us about model making.
Okay, yeah, well, recently I've gotten back into building model airplane kits, which I have not done since I was probably 12 or 13 years old, when I used to kind of build one a week. But I don't know. I don't know what struck me about it, but I recently got a bunch of them and started building them again.
See, that's weird because I kind of got the same bug.
Yeah.
For other stuff.
Why airplanes in particular?
I like airplanes. I like the way they look. I like being able to pick them off the shelf and, fly them around while making the airplane noise.
That's
right?
always important, yeah.
Yeah, like they have kind of a reasonable play value.
Yeah. Ground vehicles are always a pain in the butt because you have to, like, crawl around.
You have to, like, grind them around on the floor, and it's hard on them. And ironically, armor kits, like model tanks, are way more fragile than model airplanes.
Really?
Because they're way greeblier.
They have all sorts of weird stuff on them, yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, factually. Like, a tank, like a model tank, if you're building, like, if you're building a model Sherman, like the American World War II tank, those things were covered in crap.
Yeah. Well,
you had 4 or 5 people living in them. So they were just, like,
right.
covered in gear and, spare things. So when you're playing with them on the ground, right, you're always knocking shit off of them.
I'll tell you, I finally, like, opened up. I haven't worked on it yet, but I picked up a Sturm Tiger, which is my favorite tank from World War II.
Oh yeah, the best thing about a Sturm Tiger is that you can actually play with it a lot because they were never in the field long enough to accumulate any kind of.
380 millimeter rocket propelled siege mortar.
Yeah, yeah.
Seems reasonable.
Self-propelled. So, I thought it's been forever since I built a tank model, and I thought that the tracks are going to be like the sort of like soft plastic.
Oh, but it's
cast.
individual.
It's
track
individual links.
Yeah, no, those
There's
are really nice.
hundreds of them.
Yeah, it's really nice because you build the base layer, right, that it sits on. Then you build up the like the diagonals, and then you can actually build the sag into the tracks
Yeah,
because
so
as they
that's gonna
got
be-
used, they stopped being taut.
It's going to be interesting because you have to simulate the gravity on them.
Mhm.
I mean,
It's,
if you want to be serious about it.
which of course you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's serious business.
A model kit is kind of like buying a problem that you want to solve.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
a sense.
like if I wanted a plane to sit on my shelf, I could just buy like a die-cast
Yeah, but where's the
pre-assembled
I mean,
kit, right?
It's sort of like it's like the on a smaller scale, but it's like building a boat in your garage or something,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like the objective is not to get the thing,
Mhm.
because if that was the objective,
You could just
you could just
Yeah,
buy the
it's-
thing.
It
buy
is
the
a
thing,
it is a very much process-based thing.
Mhm.
right? And to the point where, I mean, it's like any like Lego or any of that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
where obviously with the model kit you can't like build it and then be like get rid of it and throw it into your bag of model
Right,
stuff.
right.
But,
But yeah, like it is very process intensive, right? Because you want each little bit of it to be kind of as perfect as you can get it,
Mm.
right? But there is, I don't know, the Japanese concept of like the imperfect as well, that you can never like that the imperfections in it are the kind of things that you always wind up looking at and contemplating the most.
Yeah.
Even if you're kind of mentally cursing them, it's the things that are not right with it that hold your attention.
Well, yeah, it's also like nobody's going to build a plane quite like you do.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to build a tank quite like I do.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, there's also this concept that I don't particularly like war, or the concept of war, or even really am a huge fan of the concept of
I
like
feel like
nation states or
I
it's
feel
just
like
the look
you
you
might be
like.
on
Yeah.
the same page as I do, where it's like terribly fascinating and horrendous,
yeah.
right?
Like
So-
I've been building specifically Second World War British aircraft.
Yeah.
Right, because conceivably those are planes that like Canadians would have flown.
Mm.
And for whatever reason I like to build planes that Canadians would have flown. But like I don't really hold any illusions. I don't like building German kits either because the Germans weren't all bad guys. I don't really feel the need to memorialize
Right.
you can leave that up.
yeah.
Yeah, you can leave that up to
It's
me.
it's interesting. Like, do you have any desire to build like non-real things? Like whatever Robotech
Spaceships.
Yeah, like,
spaceships and stuff.
I kind of do. Like the Japanese like Gundams and things
I
are
used to
really
have-
rad kits.
Yeah.
Like they're so sweet. There's like tons of creepy little parts and
Yeah, I know a couple of people who are
Excuse me.
are deep. That is a dangerous road. You can go
Yeah.
You can go quite.
Oh, you
deep
can
on
go
those.
deep.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
as
problem
soon
is,
as you
like-
buy Gundam markers, you're in trouble.
yeah. The problem is they're super expensive.
Right.
Like I can go down to the local hobby shop and get like an Airfix Spitfire, which are actually not bad kits. They used to be total garbo when I was a kid, but now they're putting out really nice ones. For like $15,
Mm.
right? And that is like 20 to 30 hours of work.
Yeah.
And that's hard to beat. But like a Gundam kit can be like $50, $60, and like some of them are rare enough that you actually don't want to build them because they're kind of collectible in box.
As a kit, not actually
Yeah.
as the completed thing.
I spent an unreasonable amount of money on this tank, but it's like I think only 1 or 2 companies makes it.
Yeah,
And it's like a super rare tank that barely saw deployment.
yeah,
So it's just like, well, that's what it costs.
yeah.
I'm not going to scratch build the shit.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Just,
Like
make it out of putty. Yeah, flawless.
like I think my personal interest is in photo reconnaissance kits.
Ooh, are you
Um,
going to make a U2?
Actually, no. What I've got right now is I've got a 1/72 Spitfire photo reconnaissance 19 and a de Havilland Mosquito, which was like a very beautiful aircraft, right? And the British photo reconnaissance aircraft were painted like this wonderfully deep azure blue, and occasionally you'll find ones that were pink. But like,
Pink.
yeah, pink. It was apparently a very effective camouflage when you're flying at 40,000 feet.
Maybe just at sunset you turn
Yeah.
into a cloud.
Yeah, basically.
Ooh.
But they're very aesthetically pleasing, and also they didn't proximately murder people, right?
That's fair.
Like, they resulted in a whole lot of motherfuckers being killed. Don't get me wrong.
just like information warfare. See,
Yeah.
just like
And I just really like the idea, like, conceptually, of this aircraft, which is a machine with people in it, being like kind of this temporary cyborg organism that's a hybrid of like the pilot and the machine, where
it's kind
the
of like an extension of the pilot.
the pilot is the nervous system of this organism, and the plane itself is like the eye spot of a nation state. Right, where it's this very kind of like primitive sensory organ for a much larger meta organism.
Wild.
Right.
So
Do you still have any of your kits that you built from when you were a kid?
Oh no. They were attritioned off by like cats and smaller children.
oh, that's a drag.
Yeah, but it happens. They're temporary things. There's kind of a Buddhist element to like putting like 30 hours into something will break.
Just like everything else.
So
Yeah.
and are you now, like, I've never built planes and stuff, but at various times I've been being into like Warhammer and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that the actual like to the point where like I found the actual like building and painting I was more interested in the playing of the game.
Right.
But do you find like with building the planes and stuff, the actual like building process or the painting process, like is there one or the other that you prefer?
I actually like assembling them quite a bit because you are constantly involved in this process of like testing things fits together, then cementing them together, filling gaps and misaligned pieces, sanding, then refilling and sanding, and you get to this point where like when you have arrived at a completed piece, it looks like you've done nothing to it. Right, so you can kind of you obscure imperfections in the kit with tens of hours of work that are completely imperceptible when they're done correctly.
You know what? It's like
Right.
the opposite of math. It's like if you did all your work, did the end result, and then erased all your work.
Yeah,
That's kind of weird.
yeah. No, I find it very relaxing. Right, like I remember I actually used to play Warhammer quite a bit, and I would paint friends' armies for them. And at one point, I built a resin kit for a friend who had bought one online, and I showed it up. I gave it to him, and he's like, "Oh, well, this went together really well. I probably could have done this." And I was like,
I'll kill you
"I put 30 hours into making this thing
to make it look flawless.
to make it look like it was nothing."
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Otherwise, you'd have like weird sprues coming out.
Yeah, and like
everything.
this
Yeah.
kit was actually a nightmare to put together,
I mean, it's
and
like
getting it to work
it's
like
like
that.
a lot
was-
of skills.
Yeah.
Now-
Where it's like, you go to a 5-star restaurant, right? And you're like, well, I could have cooked this.
No, you couldn't.
And it's like, no.
But it's almost, it is in some ways it's almost
Or a
like
3-star restaurant.
like a more advanced, more sort of real world version of like Lego or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're putting together these little pieces to make a big thing. Except in the cases of model making, the pieces aren't necessarily all the same, or then they're not sort of designed to hook together in quite this.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually interesting because, like, while I love building model planes, I don't actually enjoy playing with Lego that much because I never quite know what to do with it, and maybe that just means that I'm not a terribly imaginative or creative person.
I mean,
Because, like,
there
I
are
can't-
Lego kits. of
There are
course,
Lego
the
kits,
same
but
way.
I always find that, like,
To me, that sort of
almost-
defeats the purpose of Lego.
exactly.
In some ways.
At least that's the subtext I get from like buying a Lego kit, where I like look at it and go, I feel that I am not getting the full Lego experience if I build what's on the box,
Yeah,
and
to
that I
me-
should be like exploring the configurational space that's afforded to you by having a free-form building block toy, but I never know what to do with it because I don't like.
Yeah.
Like I actually like enjoy going through people's blogs of like people who build like spaceships out of Lego, and they're these wonderfully creative, inventive designs that also like run the gamut from being like, looking like anime spaceships all the way to things like that look like natural outgrowths of like the NASA space station or Mir,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, and I think this is wonderful. I am so stupid. I could never have done anything even remotely like this. And yet it doesn't even look like Lego anymore. It just looks like that when you see someone who's really talented with it, it's like looking at really good, like, I don't know, 8-bit
They're
pixel
just
art.
using it
right?
as like a medium.
In
Yeah.
a sense, it is like 3D pixels.
Yeah, yeah, where they the Lego, I think of it as being kind of like blocky and never being able to fully approximate or represent what I want to build with it, but instead they have just worked with it fully and are fully exploiting the medium.
Yeah.
Do you ever have an urge to like add an extra set of wings onto one of your model planes, or like mess around with the kit?
Occasionally, but I can never make it work, right? Like you look at planes that show up in like alt history properties, things like, there was that one FASA turn-based game like 10 years ago, and it also turned up in a lot of like Xbox titles. It was like Wings of whatever, but it was like, you would have these fighter squadrons fighting through like an America that had split into like 6 factions, and they were launched from Zeppelins.
Crimson Skies?
Crimson Skies, right? And you look at the alternate history, kind of like, 1930s, not biplanes, not yet low-winged, all-metal
Right, right.
monoplanes, right? And they're all really cool. And I'm like, not quite for me, but like,
It's interesting you mentioned that. My dad used to build, and still does build, a lot of model airplanes. And have you ever read his graphic novel Tempest Fugitive?
no, I haven't.
It's I won't go into the entire description, but there's a lot of planes and like alt history planes in it.
Well,
And he
that's
kit bashed a bunch of them.
really, no kidding.
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's wonderful. Tempest Fugitive.
Tempest Fugitive.
Yeah, because that's a pun.
it's one of his best works, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's,
like that's a
like,
wonderful pun too,
It's
because
really
like
good.
you have
He is,
Tempest Fugit,
Yeah.
right? Time flies.
and he is actually like a temporal fugitive.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really great.
That's really good. I like that.
I have a soft spot. We'll get the ISBN up or something.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, he kit bashed some of the sci-fi planes that showed in it, and then there's like this, like sort of like 50s Cold War era like experimental bomber that shows up in it, and he like built that as well.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like the right now I'm building like a Hawker Tempest, which is this late war British aircraft that looks like the product of 5 years or 6 years of extraordinarily hostile evolution, which it basically is, right? Because it has no flair to it, right? Like it is a very sparse looking aircraft. Like you look at early war aircraft, like, like the Spitfire, and it has like this kind of sports car aesthetic to it. But the Tempest has no pretenses.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't look like, it's like an aluminum tube with wings
Right.
and a
right.
radiator at the front, and it looks like it looks like a highly evolved killing machine.
Yeah. Sorry. Speaking of planes and models that my dad built, I'm just remembering another thing that he has like right next to his desk, and this is so clever it makes my teeth hurt. So he has a black and white photo, like an aerial photograph of like, I think it might be somewhere in Germany, and hung on top of it are a squadron of planes in different scales. So they look like they're in perspective.
Like force perspective? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like teeny tiny ones and like big ones, and like
Huh. Neat.
it's really cool.
Neat.
It's very, very cool. He's built a lot of models over the years.
But like, once I complete the one I'm working on right now, I want to build my Mosquito, but I'm having difficulty deciding whether I want to do the photo reconnaissance one, which I like the looks of and I like kind of like the conceptual implications of, or whether I want to do it as the bomber version, which you can also build from the same kit, because the Mosquito bombers did things like, precision bombing of Gestapo headquarters
Yeah.
in like in European cities. And the squadron that is depicted in that kit is the one that I think it was Operation Carthage,
Yeah.
which was the bombing of the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, where they flew below rooftop level down Copenhagen streets and skipped bombs like
What the shit?
into the front of the building.
Sweet.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's rad. And then you read the next paragraph and you're like, oh yeah, because what happened was that 1,000-pound bomb traveling at 400 miles an hour, skipping down an asphalt street, does not stop when it hits the front door of a building, or the interior walls of that building, or the back walls of that building, or the fence around the building in the back. It stops when it hits it. Point in order. Stopped when it hit the school next door.
Oh,
Whoops.
And like precision flying, precision bomb dropping.
But then
Ugh.
once the bomb has been dropped, well,
yeah. Well,
then it's kind of out of our hands.
speaking of precision, it was interesting what you were saying about your choice to go with like reconnaissance planes and stuff like that. Because I sort of ended up recently going kind of the opposite end, because I built a V1 and a V2,
right.
which killed a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
And to me, they're incredibly historically significant weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the V1 is this like robot bomb that terrorized London,
Mm-hmm.
and the V2 is the same deal. But out of that rocket came the space program,
Right.
Right.
which is pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
and interesting and full of like weird implications to ponder.
Yeah. Well, like you always hear about like the V2 killed like X thousands of people.
Yeah.
But I think it killed roughly the equivalent amount of slave laborers working on it.
Jesus.
Yeah. Like Werner von Braun got a very good deal coming to the United States.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I've only seen a couple of photos of like the assembly lines underground, like all the various parts, putting them together. I also got off eBay some out of box kits of Fat Man and Little Boy that I haven't put together yet.
Neat. Are
And
they?
They're all in the same scale,
Oh, okay.
so I kind of want to make like together. It's just like the explosives that shaped history,
Yeah.
for who blasted their way into
Yeah.
Explosives through the ages.
just like look
Yeah.
at these horrible weapons of
Yeah.
mass destruction that
Like
indelibly changed the course of
yeah,
history.
like only used on civilians.
Jeez. Yeah, I was gonna get into like the Cold War stuff, and I realized that I don't have to buy all the individual missiles because they have like a diorama
Oh,
of, like,
really?
United States and Russia.
Right. So you have like
Just
Tsar
like,
Bomba next to Castle Bravo.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think it's most of the like ICBMs and
Oh, okay.
like, various things like that, and like it's got like the Tomahawk in the front and stuff.
Yeah, like I love that kind of like contemplation of the doomsday weapons. Kind of like well, we were talking about this when we did Ender's Game on Fight the Future, but like Ender's father who obsessively watches footage of the Formic invasion,
right.
being kind of like people who are like obsessively watching like news footage from 9/11.
Jeez. I wanted to get a flying crowbar, but I think the kit's out of print.
Yeah, no, that thing
Like
is
speaking
so...
of contemplating doomsday machines,
Mhm.
I've told this story many times, but it's like the most frightening weapon that ever was.
Yeah, the American was nuclear powered supersonic
cruise,
bomber.
Yeah, supersonic cruise
Right,
missile
yeah.
bomber.
Yeah.
Yeah, a like nuclear ramjet engine filled to the brim with hydrogen bombs that would like fly in donuts over the USSR when it was empty.
Yeah.
Seems
Like
fun.
that would be the kind of thing that you would just see like in Fallout.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it would be like, and we have like 90 minutes to get through this area before the flying crowbar goes overhead again and
and just like
irradiates it.
wipes us out.
Yeah,
It's like, ugh.
but it's like clockwork, right? But it's going to be up there for 1,000 years doing donuts over this irradiated wasteland
It's like, why
with an
can't we shoot it down?
unshielded
Well,
reactor.
it's flying at treetop level at about Mach 4.
Yeah, so good luck.
So
We could string up nets.
it was like the weird part about that is we were sort of spared that because ICBMs were cheaper, more effective, and
Mhm.
like just made more
Yeah.
sense. And you said that the other reason was like if the Allies built one, then Russia would have built one too. And then
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, then we
how
need
do
to
we
build
test this thing?
we need to build a bigger one.
Build a bigger one, yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
how are we
going-
still alive?
going off on actually talking about just general war stuff and how horrible war machines
yeah, apparently
are.
now this is Cold War the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were
I
talking
think what
about
we
hobbies.
conclude, we can conclude that war machines, when made teeny tiny,
Yeah,
And
are
harmless.
super cool.
are super cool. Full size ones,
Not so much.
Yeah,
not so
good.
much.
Like
No.
it's like that Onion sidebar article where it was like, gun control activist admits Barrett 50 cal rifle, pretty sweet.
God.
But how about you? I mean, obviously you're doing model building too.
Yeah.
But in terms of other hobbies,
So I had a this like is probably going to bend the rules we said at the very beginning, but like as some people are aware,
why do we
do-
even have rules?
I know I do illustration, but it's like sort of my job, a little bit. Like I mean, I guess
Yes,
it becomes.
You would like it to be more of.
I think so. It's already like becoming a thing. Like I have my Patreon and I
Right.
make commission work, which
Well-
kind of surprises me because like
Interestingly enough, when I was talking about building model planes, there were people who were like, you should build these on a stream sometime. And like now I'm beginning to wonder if, well, I guess it's not a very far out there idea, but like
No, it's
Twitch is a
not.
way of just monetizing hobbies, certain kinds of hobbies.
yeah,
It's true.
actually, it's starting with one specific one, but it's expanding
I mean, it's
into others.
monetizing the. I get it. Yeah, it's sort of taking the idea that watching somebody else indulge in their hobby can actually be quite
And I
interesting
guess
to
like
other
your
people.
success on
Yeah.
there is predicated on you either being really good at that or being very entertaining
Yeah.
or interesting.
I'm
But yeah.
sorry I interrupted you.
No,
there.
not a problem. So like I've been drawing all my life, but I only started taking it seriously within the last few years.
Mhm.
Kind of like my dad's genetics caught up to me, and I just like started drawing a lot more stuff, and like I got a tablet, and so I'm sort of like straddling between digital and traditional. And I can't say that I like one better than the other. Like they're both really good, and they're basically just different tools in your kit.
Mhm.
I don't know that I would swear an oath of fealty to either of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I think in a couple of decades, the traditional versus digital distinction will kind of vanish, and it'll be like, well, do you work with charcoal or ink? As being kind of like
Yeah,
an argument nobody ever has.
yeah. I mean, it's like I use Photoshop pretty extensively on sketches, but I just recently started playing around with ink and paper, which is lots of fun.
Yeah, I've got a bottle of India ink, and I'm terrified of using it.
I know, right? Like it feels really important and official and like steeped in history.
Yeah, and also like absolutely indelible,
Oh yeah,
right?
It's like you put that line down, it's there until the end of time.
yeah, well, like I
But that's what makes it so exciting.
yeah, like I follow at Kay Lancashire, who's a friend of mine from in town, and she works with India ink, and like her work is like exquisitely precise, right? And you think of like that kind of process as being very much like you hear about Da Vinci having to paint the Last Supper in egg tempera on wet plaster, and every dab of the brush was permanent, right?
Yeah.
And you had to work very quickly and flawlessly.
I mean, like it's this sort of like cowboy artistry that like it does have a kind of a thrill to it, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because like, and I'm gonna try to frame this in a way that isn't like a complete criticism of digital, but like, digital gives you a lot of outs.
Mhm.
Like if you make a mistake, you can go back on it
Right.
very easily.
Well, somebody was talking recently about trying to use Photoshop with no layers.
I only ever use one layer. Like I
Really?
will sometimes
Okay.
use 2 layers. And like I used to be that person who used like 50 layers. And then eventually I was like, this is bullshit. Because like the advantage of going back is an advantage.
Mhm.
It can also become a crutch,
Right.
which like makes it so that you don't commit to anything. And so you just keep like putting these options out and never actually like finishing this stupid
It's
thing.
more of a sort of
And
a psychological thing as opposed to a
it also
technical.
becomes a logistical nightmare because then you're tracking. It's like, where is the layer that has the like one stroke on the sclera of this character in the background.
Right.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine that. I think that's ridiculous.
Right.
That
And
some people paint like that. And I think they're crazy.
I also imagine that it requires you to do much more kind of like mental planning, right?
Yeah.
And make more thoughtful commitments.
Yeah, it's nice working.
Or happy accidents.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's true. It's like, just it's fun and interesting and
Right.
exciting, and it does require you to be more thoughtful, and that thoughtfulness is valuable. And I'm trying to learn how to harness that in a way that's useful.
Right.
And I mean, in some ways, talking about hobbies and stuff, while the art is transitioning from not being so much of a hobby for you, but there's this idea with the model making and stuff as well, where there is this element of sort of something that you can kind of get lost in, get focused in.
That's my favorite thing, and it's very difficult for me to get into. But like once I get lost in a painting, it's so magical, and I just love it so much. Then the problem,
the zone.
Well, yeah, because it's like I have a lot of anxiety about my artwork, a lot of anxiety, and when I get like, I'll ping off the surface a lot, but once I like become sort of like tuned into a piece I'm working on, it's just like everything just works.
Right.
And it's it's indescribable unless you've like actually tried it. It's just like you feel so like on, and everything's just happening the way you want it to, and like you feel like you can't make mistakes.
Right. Oh, that's
yeah, it's really great. And if you do, you don't care. You're just like beyond this sort of like apprehension about like making everything flawless. It's like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We can just like do it, do the shit.
Well, like
you turn into Shia LaBeouf, and you just that's the thing he was talking about. This is the painting that you finished.
Oh, like kind of unrelated, maybe related, similar feeling at least was in the last year and a half I've been doing life drawing with Julie. Best birthday present ever, by the way.
Right?
And I think last year, one of like the model will do 1 minute poses, 2 minute poses, 5 minute poses, and like at the end they're doing 20-minute poses, like 1 or 2 20-minute poses. And one session several months ago, the model like stacked up a bunch of like pillows and benches, or like a stool, covered it with a blanket and leaned up against it, right? Like in one of these, like put her head against her hand and her elbow on the thing and leaned against it. But I was sitting opposite to her, so all I got was her arm and hand and a bit of her, like the back of her head.
Super foreshortened?
Yeah, and like a bunch of people came up to me when she took the pose and were like, do you want to move around? And I'm like, no, actually, I think I want to work with this. So I have this one sketch that I worked on for like 20 minutes, which is just like this drapery with a super foreshortened arm and a forearm and a hand, and like just this like head and a bit of her back. And I think it's my favorite piece.
That's yeah. Well, I mean,
just because like, and also the quality of light was really good because the sun was just going down. I think it was in the middle of summer.
It's almost more of like a still life than a figure drawing.
Sometimes
cool.
the challenging things are the ones that you value the most, because it's like, I think something that these hobbies have in common is like, I don't know, maybe the challenging ones are the most rewarding.
Yeah.
It could be. Like, I don't know that like a hobby that's super easy is necessarily like, it's not. I'm sure there's some hobbies that you like because they're easy.
It's
right.
challenging in a certain way. It's that sort of challenge that is I guess achievable, or challenge that you are. It's sort of, you're confident that you can do it.
Well,
you just need to put the time and effort into it.
Right.
The sensation,
and getting that ability to do that is always nice.
The sensation of being able to exert all of your skill and resource onto something successfully is powerfully satisfying.
Yes. Yes.
Just like I gave 100% and it worked.
Yeah.
You just feel like a champ, and it's really great. Or even if like it's maybe not what you hoped, but you like raised your own bar a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that's like I think that's an important process for growing as a person, because like when Bob Ross says it's like there's no mistakes, only happy accidents. Like it's true, and the only time you fail is if you stop.
Right.
Like if you just keep going, you can never fail.
Yeah.
You just like get better a little bit at a time. You just like pile up those little 1 XP bumps until you like. It is like grinding.
Yeah. Now, you know
RPG
what I
grinding.
should do today is go out and get like an ink palette, so you can have all your dilutions for India ink.
Whoa,
So I can actually
that's-
just like work at it,
that's
because like
tech.
Julie did fine arts. She did a couple of years of fine arts in school, right? And she paints as well. She's had paintings in galleries, and she was telling me how to do India ink, and you do dilutions.
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far. I'm just working on doing line art because I got. This is the nice part about being related to artists. My dad, for the price of lunch, gave me a Winsor Newton Series 7 sable brush
Ooh.
and I don't remember the name of the nib,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like an ink nib that's like a type that's kind of hard to find. I'm sounding like such a hipster here. Just like, oh, they're not so easy. But it's some thing that he had back in his archives that he found a supply of these like really good quality nibs, the names of which completely escape me. And it's really great to draw with.
The real traditional artists, you have to start by just taking a swig of the India ink, just take a shot of it to really understand the
Yeah,
product.
to
That
grok
would
it, to
mess
fully
you up.
understand it. But like, I guess I'm misspeaking when I say, to properly use it. What I mean is like, one of the things you can do with it, or one of the ways of
Yeah.
exploiting it, is that you can actually get like a lot of different shades of black or shades of gray
Well,
out of
yeah,
it.
you just dilute it a little bit because I think Ken was telling me that there's some comic artist, I don't remember who it was, but he did all of his sort of tone work with ink dilutions.
Mhm.
And there's something really kind of great about simplifying your tools to that extent, where it's just
Right.
paper, ink, tool.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of great because then it's like all skill based. I don't know how to describe this, where it's just like sometimes if you have like a shit ton of tools, sort of like in the way that you get with like Photoshop, you have access to like 50 trillion brushes and like all these effects and stuff, and none of them are going to make you a better artist.
Right.
They have their uses.
Well,
They
yeah.
are valuable.
Mhm.
But I think it's a trap that, especially people who are learning for the first time fall into, that it's just like, oh, I can do like a drawing that's not actually that good and like pile all these effects
Yeah.
and shit on top
Well,
of
it's
it.
like
and,
like never
know.
underestimate the freeing potential of a limited palette, right?
Right, of
you-
course,
it's
yeah.
great.
it,
Like
it hones your skills, but it also lets you show off quite a lot. Like having a limited palette is actually kind of like humble brag, right? When you can execute it well.
Well-
It's like I was talking with an older person about having watched Mad Max Fury Road, and they said something about like, well, I mean, there was no plot to it. Nothing happened in the plot. Like it was
Well.
like they drove out and then they drove back. Like it's
Yeah.
not very it's not a very like complex story. And I'm like, yeah,
it doesn't need to be.
yeah, you don't need a complex.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be complex in order to be sophisticated.
Well, it's like I really, really love working on one layer now. Like the only time I'll use more than one layer is like I'll do inks and then sometimes color
Okay.
or like tone.
Hmm.
But more often than not, I just like one layer, paint the whole thing, and I use about 5 or 7 grays
Okay.
that I've just like picked out of my palette, and that's all I use.
I mean, it's obviously, you have to be, you can go too far.
Yeah,
you know,
if you're
get
you're
into
not.
you get into like the hipster stuff.
Well, the
right?
thing is like I'm not trying to hamstring myself because that's stupid. It's like, oh, I
Right.
can draw this with like weights on my arms and stuff, but like
that's how it's the real pure experience.
But yeah, just like tidying down your tools and things to worry about
or
to just the bare essentials
or
can
just
be really nice. It feels clean.
and sort of doing it that, bringing kind of your focus down to just
Yeah,
that part,
exactly.
and then taking that and opening your focus back up again.
Exactly. Yeah. So
and
once
using that.
once you've got your brass tacks, then you can start adding those elements back in as enhancements, which is exactly what they are. Like once I get I've promised myself that once I get a handle on like line and form and shade and like lighting and tone and stuff like that, I will go back into doing coloring, because I used to do a lot of like
Right.
digital coloring, but I thought to myself, it's like I should actually learn how to draw
Right.
before I draw.
Right.
That was kind of a revelation.
Well, it's like in when you do creative writing, right? That like you need to learn how to work with certain forms before you can work without them,
Right.
right? Like before you can write blank verse, you should probably be able to write a sonnet.
yeah, it's like you need to learn the rules so that you can break them later.
Yeah,
You
and
need
break
to learn
them
the
well.
rules and you'll break them for a reason.
Yeah,
And then, and then once you've done all you've worked with the brush and then done all your work with tone and form and stuff, and finally you get to the pinnacle where you can use the plastic wrap effect in Photoshop
Oh god.
and give a little mosaic, or
Yep.
do lighting effects.
And just like in Comic Sans with like bevel emboss, drop shadow,
But-
and edge glow.
but
but, like-
the edge glow will be there for a reason.
Yep.
well, I mean, like you
Reason is
can
you
see
hate
like
everyone.
effective rule breaking being done well in a lot of different places, right? Like I don't think Seinfeld would have been as remarkable as it was at the time if we hadn't had like 20 years or 30 years of sitcoms that were like A plot, B plot,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the rules are there for a reason,
Mhm.
because somebody at some point, well, actually, not even somebody, like a group of creators sometimes will converge on a solution, and
Yeah.
you should at least understand that solution before you come up with your own, because
Mhm.
like you might be reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Where you're like, well, why don't they just do this? And it's like, well, there's a reason for that, and if you tried to learn the rules, you would understand that.
Well, it's why they teach young poets like Aristotle's Poetics, right,
Mhm.
in first year, right? It's like this is what one of the first people in Western literature or in Western in the Western liberal tradition thought plays should look like,
Yeah.
right? And here, this is their reasons for that.
Turns out he knew nothing. It
Yeah.
was the worst idea.
Well, I mean, like they're perfectly fine ideas,
That's
right? Like that
also-
you should have unity of purpose and scene, and like,
Right. That. Yeah.
yeah.
The whole thing.
That's also why, and like most of the time when somebody on social media will ask me, it's like, what tablet should I get? I'm like, get a stack of cheap paper and a pencil first.
yeah,
Unless you're already
Yeah, like,
spending time doing that,
yeah, like,
do not start on a tablet.
yeah,
Like I think that's a bad idea.
yeah. I mean, like,
It's a bad and
they're
also an
asking,
expensive idea.
yeah, like if they're asking like, oh, well, I want to get the proper tools before I start. It's like, well, the
Uh,
proper tools are,
What you have.
yeah,
Hmm.
like a stack of printer paper
These are the proper tools.
yeah,
But seriously, like a
like
cheap
otherwise
pencil
go on
and
the
paper.
wire cutter, right? I'm sure they've got a perfectly good review of like a Cintiq, like what model of Cintiq is the best.
Yeah, but it's just like I can't emphasize enough that like high grade tools will not make you a good artist. They
Mhm.
just won't. They will
They will give you bad habits.
no,
maybe?
they won't give you bad habits. It's just like your skill has to be able to utilize them for them to be useful.
Right. And I mean, in some cases,
Because
high grade tools will actually function worse for somebody who.
yeah, if you don't know how to, use something properly, yeah, it won't work the way you want it to.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's. I mean. Yes.
I'm trying to think of like a simile or not a simile, like a
Well, like you don't get somebody who just got their driver's license a Ferrari.
yeah, there you go. That's
Right.
yeah, or like a Bugatti Veyron.
Yeah.
You get them like a car.
Right. Yeah. Something to hone their skills
Yeah,
on.
it's like something with four wheels, and a steering wheel, and a shifter.
Yeah.
You don't get them the sort of like automobile, because it's like it's a little bit too hot for you to handle.
Mhm.
And that's not-
also you
and that's
probably
not-
won't appreciate it, or like, well, that's kind of rude.
Yeah,
But like you won't be able to fully exploit it.
yeah. It's just like or like a Formula One racer, where I hear that like the steering is unbelievably slippery.
Really?
So unless you're like, you know what the hell you're doing, you'll just
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to drive at all, but I would assume that if I was put into the driver's seat of a Formula One car, I would like hit the gas and then suddenly the car would just
Well-
start doing backflips and
well,
fall
that's
over.
the thing is like I hear that the way they're designed is that they perform best at their top speed,
Right.
which is horrifying to think of.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you have to be like
It's the worst.
thinking of
Yeah. Well, I mean,
at that speed.
you say that, and then you think, well, of course they are, right? Because there's
You wouldn't design it to perform better at a lower speed.
yeah,
That would
no,
be dumb. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. No, that
It's
actually
like-
makes total sense.
Yeah.
But-
I want to frame all of this in a way that like is in no way like demeaning of
Mhm.
people
Or condescending.
Yeah.
But like,
It's just like please bear in mind fundamentals first because like
Mhm.
it's important and useful.
Well, and it's and just sort of not letting lack of technology or lack of
Yeah.
equipment stop you from. I mean,
like
I guess
these are fundamentally like I guess you could say about a hobby is that it's also kind of fundamentally democratic in that like a lot of them don't have a high barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean that's.
Although
I mean, it's hard to be. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, there
No.
are expensive hobbies.
I was going to
certainly.
say that's actually a great like sort of segue into more discussion about hobbies because there are ones that have super high barriers.
Well, yeah, I guess like yachting.
Yeah,
right,
even magic,
But-
Yeah, magic. Yeah, no, that's
depending
that's
on the
totally fair.
format.
But like I guess the one about drawing
Yeah.
is that
Well,
it's-
anybody can pick up a pencil and start
I mean,
Yeah.
sketching.
I was trying to think. As we're coming running out of time here. So I was trying to think about hobbies, sort of in general, and I feel like there's the thing that maybe unites the model building and the drawing and all these kind of hobbies is this idea where where it is something where your in your main objective, and in some cases you might actually be making some money for it,
Mhm.
but the main objective in doing it is for your own like the I guess the impetus to do it is sort of coming from within.
yeah.
It's coming from your own desire to get better at that thing or to
Yeah,
produce
well,
that thing,
It's a form of enrichment.
as opposed to an external getting money to do it or whatever.
Right,
It's something that you're doing. It's something you're doing without.
Well, for
without,
pleasure.
yeah, for
for its own
pleasure,
sake.
for pleasure, and without the need to be, without the need to have sort of an incentive to
Yeah,
do it.
or
The-
coercion.
Doing it is in itself the incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And getting better at
the
it.
process is the
Mhm.
incentive.
The process, the process too, yeah. So, and I think that's sort of I think what really, and it's the there's always the thing that you hear talk about the sort of like, there's the old like introvert extrovert thing where it's like if you're an introvert or if you're an extrovert, then like hanging out with people and going to parties and stuff is energizing,
Mhm.
and if you're an introvert, then being alone can be energizing.
Yes.
And
yeah.
it's with like a hobby, as opposed to work is like something that it looks like work in a
Yeah,
lot of cases,
yeah.
I guess
but
it emotionally energizes.
but it's
you?
emotionally energizing,
Mhm,
or it's something that you do to relax from work, even if it often doesn't look that different
Yeah, I
to
mean,
an
it's like-
outside observer.
It can sort of unwind you, and you sometimes get a real kick out of it. Like when
Mhm.
you're just like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
And it's a sensation that you can't purchase anywhere.
Mm.
Not the sensation itself. Like you can buy the kit and the paints and tools and stuff,
Mhm.
but
Models are just the thing that you
the
can't buy
sensation
anywhere. I
of
guess you can't.
finishing a kit or finishing an illustration or something is
Mhm.
not for sale.
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's maybe why it's so valuable. Is like,
Yeah, and it's I mean like it's interesting the way there is that transitional. Of course, Loading Ready Run used to be a hobby for Graham and I and people, and for some people who are involved with Loading Ready Run stuff, it probably still would be considered a hobby. People who are who only come and help us out occasionally and stuff.
Right.
It's more of a thing as a way to sort of hang out with friends and stuff.
Mhm.
But as time has gone on, it has become, more of a job with, and that has obviously good aspects and bad aspects. But it does mean that it's sort of become the thing where it's like, rather than doing loading ready run to relax from doing job, it's like doing loading ready run. But now I need something to relax from loading ready run.
Right.
Can I just say it's really weird, because I play video games kind of as a job. I don't play that many video games to unwind anymore.
I don't play video games at home.
It's weird. It's like the only one that I've played recently is Fallout, because it's Fallout. But like I did not find myself playing a lot of video games.
Yeah,
at home.
and I find I play different types of video games.
Yeah.
Like games I play on my own will tend to be more, I guess, more kind of puzzly or more. I mean, especially games that I don't want to play on the stream.
Yeah,
for whatever
there's a few
reason.
kinds of games that I will play not on stream.
Either games that are like more kind of puzzly or repetitive,
right?
Or games that, games that I'm not very good at it, and I don't want to have to make people watch me play the same thing over and over and over again. Even though I'm enjoying, like I'm getting enjoyment out of it, even though I am repeating the same stuff. But an outside observer would probably be annoyed with it. So that's in that sense, video gaming is certainly a hobby, and of course has become a job for us. But it's an interesting split, and for all the stuff too. I mean, drawing, obviously for many people it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
But
for me, it's a kind of a part-time job for me. But yeah, some people do it.
But even as a part-time job or as a full-time job, or lots of people who do it as as a paid activity also do it as a hobby,
well,
and it's a different
that's
kind of
thing.
thing.
Of like why they got into the game in the first place is because they wanted to like draw stuff. Like part of why it's important to me is like I have all these ideas rattling around in my head, and being able to expel them through my hand onto a page is like there's a relief there and there's a satisfaction there, and it's just a thrill being able to like think of something and create it in the world, even if it's on like a piece of paper, just like this was in my head. Now you can see it.
I should have kept it in my head.
The artist's frustration, of course, is like the fidelity of that transfer.
Right.
And that's where the practice and skill comes in, because like one day, I hope to be able to replicate things like much more accurately as I can imagine them.
Right.
So.
Well, and I mean, I assume it also kind of shapes the way that you imagine things too, because the fidelity of the transfer to the medium is shaped by the fact that you think in terms of that medium.
Well, it's also,
right?
You learn interesting things about this. Like, it goes both ways. Like, in order to be able to replicate things in a sort of like creative context, you need to train your observation skills, which is something that is ongoing with me. It's like, we all know what a tree looks like, right?
Yeah.
But do you really know what a tree looks like?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, draw one. I mean, I guess there's a trunk and maybe some branches. It's like, how do the branches connect? At what angle do they go in? Depending on like what, season they're in. What do they look like? How do the branches hang? How do the leaves hang?
Yeah.
What is the shape of? How do they look in perspective?
How does the light fall?
Stuff you can identify a tree if you just glance at it, but like, you really need to like sit down and actually assess what the object looks like. So that you can, do that.
And then how does a specific tree look?
Yeah, and then you get the entire cornucopia. It's like you have like rough idea of tree, and then specific tree. It's like, what does a baobab tree look like?
Well, yeah, and that's also the exercise of like still life drawing and life drawing, right? It's like, how does
body look?
Yeah, like where do these muscles actually connect, and how do people stand, and how is their weight distributed? Right?
Yeah, it's like I can see their skeleton under all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like this protrusion is because of this and stuff like that. That's all shit I need to learn.
Spend 20 years drawing potatoes.
Yeah.
Then, only then will you learn.
Will you understand the potato? Like, drawing's great, by the way. Please do it.
Neil deGrasse Tyson has that bit where he talks about, when he went to when he did his undergraduate degree, it was at this institute that also took all the science students and made them like do fine art stuff, right? And so he spent a term drawing pumpkins, and then one day the instructor was like, "Now draw the space between the pumpkins," and he was like, "That's bullshit." Oh my God, right? And so he was actually like, because he had spent all the time drawing like these pumpkins that would have been piled up,
Yeah.
right? And then somebody would come and disrupt the pile and then repile them, and you'd have to draw them over again. And he had drawn pumpkins, right, against like a white background.
Yeah.
And now he was drawing the background with this white pumpkin occupied space in the middle of it.
Whoa.
Right, where he had originally like not even thought of the background at all, and
Right.
it like actually altered the way he thought about scientific problems because they occur in a context.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I don't think you'll ever regret, learning stuff
Yeah,
about anything.
but
And
like
sometimes,
it's very multidisciplinary, right? Like a hobby is
Yeah.
not necessarily completely detached from the things that you do.
well, it's like there's this I think false notion that like you need to be hyper focused on the one thing that you want to do all the time to the exclusion of everything else, and that's bullshit.
Mhm.
Like, God, what the hell's his name? The comic pianist from the 50s.
Victor
Oh,
Borge?
No.
when the Rockets go up,
Yeah.
who cares where they come down?
Oh
That's
my
only
God!
the-
Come on, you can do it.
Tom Lehrer.
Yes, Tom Lehrer. He got his career start as a mathematician,
Right.
I
and he
mean-
ended up a musical comedian.
Well, like
He was actually. I mean, he was more a mathematician. Really, he continued to be a mathematician for.
But like he
Very long
worked it
time.
into his
Yeah,
his
yeah.
art. But it's just like where
and-
you start.
But the things we've been talking about here, like you recently just talked about, like observing and memorizing, or not memorizing, but remembering
Yeah.
the details of a thing.
Understanding.
These are not skills that have a very limited application, right?
Yeah,
These
they're
are
real
universal
useful.
skills,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting to see where they crop up in other places.
That's the
In
really
the-
exciting shit. Is when you learn something in like one discipline, and you discover an application for it in the other. You feel so fucking smart.
Yeah, there's sort of
It's
there's
just
sort of
like
transferable skills.
Yeah.
it's
is
really
certainly a
great.
thing, yeah.
More knowledge. It's good.
All
Yeah.
right.
So
Well,
I guess the takeaway here is dump all your XP into base stats, not skills.
yeah.
Just spec generally. Oh, that's
Yeah. Min-max is
or just respec now.
yeah. Min-maxing good for video games, probably not so good in real life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, there is that Heinlein quote about specialization is for insects. A person should be able to cook a meal, tack a ship, read a chart, compose a sonnet.
Seems wise.
I can do one of those things.
Yeah, I'm like, I have no idea how
can
to
do a
do
few
any
of
of
those.
that stuff. I can make toast.
Yeah, toast. All right. Well, I think we're out of time.
All right. Well, thank you very much for watching and or listening
Mhm.
to this podcast about hobbies, and perhaps we will do another one of these with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, this podcast, as with everything on LoadingReadyRun.com, is supported by you, by our Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. And thank you, everybody, for watching.